Reveille, donks.
Look at us now, tip to tip. This is our life. This is our passion. That's the spirit we bring to this show.
I'm Luke Thomas.
I'm Brian Campbell.
This is Morning Kombat.
Hey, we're live. What's up, everybody? How are you? Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell. Oh, I got the wrong background. Hold on, let me fix that. There we are. Now we're cooking with gas. Hi. It's the 28th of June, 2024, BC. And I think that we'll do better than what the people who want to run the country did last night. I think it'll be better than that, but not much better, honestly. I might stroke out.
To quote President Trump, Luke, I have no idea what you just said, and I don't think you do either. So that summed up the brilliantly dumb Morning Kombat just as well as it summed up the entire country's state. Look, you were legitimately shaken up in our pre-show over the future of this nation.
Well, I mean, not shaken up, more just looking for my exit plan. I think it's a little bit different.
That's the thing, because everybody always goes, oh, you guys at one point or another have outed yourself, so you must be this way. Guys, I'm not left or right. I'm get the hell out of my way because I have no idea which country I'm going to end up in. Yeah, I guess that's
I'm in the I don't care anymore. Portion of it. How are you doing, BC? How are things?
Doing good, Luke. I'm currently on a check cashing mission in a unknown location at the moment, but I'm doing great. Excited about UFC 303 this weekend, of course. Excited to be back here on a Friday. Look, this is what our people want. So in this short period where there is big events before we get our shit together, I love plugging in for an unplugged, uncensored Friday. No rules. Luke really stretching out those producer credits, right? Like an old vagine, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Wow. The passion on Luke's face as he went for that last stretch. It was great. But, Luke, maybe we should just, life needs good distractions. And there was a time when Morning Kombat was a good ass distraction in people's lives damn near every day. We're getting on our road back to there, okay? Because you need us. We need you. Tukey needs new shoes. My kids are going to college. Let's bang, okay? Eat chowder. Let's bang. Yeah. So people was like, BC, you've got 3 jokes. Yeah, but how creatively can I intertwine them constantly? That's really the question.
How many times can we just dude, if you play the hits, people like the hits. All right, so let's remind everyone today, UFC 303 preview. We'll talk a little bit about the Sphere because there was a sneak preview of it. De La Hoya going after Devin Haney. Paige VanZant wants to get slapped in the face for money. All kinds of fun stuff, BC. So, usual reminders. Let me pull this up here. You can follow us on all the social stuff right there. There's Brian. There's me. There's Morning Kombat. Everywhere you go. You can eat chowder. You can also pick up some merch, BC. MorningKombat.store. Live 10. How about
I'm not
that?
wearing any at the moment, but I love wearing it. It's most of my wardrobe. You can check out our great collaborations and collections there, including the Average Joe art crossover. Get your 10% off right now by using our code LIVE10. Look, I mean, I haven't seen his physical proof that he's alive, but I bet you RJ Double Ball Gangbanger is ready to fulfill your order. I wouldn't say in record time, but eventually, probably eventually.
We won't steal from you. I'll put it that way. I mean, you'll get your stuff. I just don't know really when. By the way, I tried some creatine gummies this week. I've always had the powder.
Creatine gummies.
Well, I've always had the powder, and it's fine, but it's not. It's like it's not a really fun thing to do. The gummies are good, but the problem is this, dude. Like a dose of creatine is 5 grams. These motherfuckers set it up where a dose is only 4 grams, and it's 5 gummies to get 4 grams. So you have to take a bunch of gummies just to get a normal dose. I don't know how I feel about that.
It's like when they sell the hot dogs in packages of 8, but the buns come in packages of 12, and you're like, what am I going to do with those other 4? You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe there'll be
It's so fucking dumb, but okay, here we are. So
I didn't know they made creatine gummies. I mean, they put all of the experiences we need now in tiny little chewable portions, Luke.
Yeah, I found it. It's do you know what is the guy? His name is Coop. He has a company called Garage Gym Reviews. Have you ever heard of this guy?
I'm not really into many of those things you mentioned. No.
So I found him during the pandemic when everyone was trying to like build gyms for their home, right? All that stuff
for their front yard. Yeah,
for the front yard.
Yeah.
And he does reviews of stuff, and they reviewed all of these like different creatine brands. And then the one they picked is like the best creatine gummy bear. I bought those, and then it's 4 grams per dose. And I'm like, why the fuck would you do that when like 5 grams is the normal dose? 10 if you're actually trying to double load it. Like I don't get that at all. But okay.
Yeah.
But they tasted good. They tasted pretty good.
Most double loads do, I've heard, Luke.
Have I? Oh, I bet you know. Have I gotten a tan, or are you just turning translucent over time? What's happening here?
If I'm pale to the transvoyant level, the see-through level, what's that? Translucent? Yeah, I don't know, Luke. Okay, I got that hotel Wi-Fi. I'm trying to hold my life and career together.
It looks pretty good, actually. It goes, right? It looks pretty good, actually. So, all right, there we are. Are you going home tomorrow or today?
I'll be home eventually, Luke. But the real question is, I don't really know what the real question is here outside of that. I mean, I ask myself that every day in the mirror.
Also, you're on the road a lot because next weekend, when are you flying out for next week?
Oh, yeah. So I'm a big part of it, thankfully, of what's going on for Diaz Masvidal 2 next week. I'll be flying out to Anaheim on Tuesday, hosting the Wednesday press conference. I'll be on the call on Saturday. And by the way, I don't think they've released the names yet, but this is an all-star broadcasting crew representing all facets of the MMA and boxing world. So, yeah, happy to be here, Luke. It was a wild build. I'll get one more chance for Nate Diaz to tell me off. I didn't get the clip in time, but our boy Alan Dawson, I think it was from his interview with Nate Diaz. He sent me some sound of Nate being like, man, somebody needs to shut that Brian Campbell guy up. I'm sick of his whack-ass questions. I'm like, Nate, you're right. Somebody really should.
Where did he say that?
It looks to be like I didn't even get to text Alan back. It looks to be from some mandatory media Zoom thing that he did.
Okay. All right. That's fucking hilarious. I would have loved to have seen that. All right, man. Well, let's get the process started. So UFC 303 is in fact tomorrow. Yesterday was the presser. We do have a couple of things from the presser, BC, but I guess the first thing I would ask you before we even start with all of that is level of enthusiasm for tomorrow. I got to say the presser was a bit dull, but for the fights themselves, pretty pumped.
Yeah, I have to say, not only did UFC do a great job, for as much as we really hand over fist aggressively can criticize them when it's called for, and that can be the matchmaking at times, but their ability to put the train on back on the track. We're not getting Conor versus Chandler, but they're like, who else would fight with not just one broken toe, but 2 of them, right? No, we found that guy, the hero, the savior, Poatan. I have to say, since those new fights were announced, I've certainly enjoyed the idea of this card from top to bottom much more in what we're going to get. But I think some of the fight week narratives are kind of interesting, to be fair. It's like, look, Poatan versus Prochazka in any vacuum is going to deliver. But now we're talking about black magic and spiritual warfare. There's some legit venom back and forth between MVP and Gary. I don't know if you heard the new, BBL Gary track that MVP laid down. I got to say, Luke, Anthony Smith believes that, the entire world is getting sick to avoid him. So pretty much we could see Anthony Smith fight for the title Saturday night based on what happens between now and then. I'm just saying overall, does it feel like the pomp and circumstance that comes with a typical IFW? I'll say no. And a lot of that is the last minute hustling they've had to do. But look, the fan in me, the purist in me that wants, the pomp, but wants really the great fights, man, I'm fired up. We got interesting. I mean, look, it's Diego Lopes about to kick my favorite fighter in the face and walk right through him. I got to find this out on Saturday, Luke.
Well, you know what? If I can be serious for a moment, I agree with you about Ian Gary and MVP. We'll play some of that here in just a second. But something that has popped up this week that I just didn't really anticipate, because if you think about it, we never think about it, which is this. Obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, there's just no question John Jones is the best light heavyweight ever. But a question that I keep seeing pop up, or at least some thoughts pop up, is, okay, fine. But who is the second best? And you might naturally say it's Daniel Cormier. And obviously, okay, fine. I'm not saying it's not. Maybe it is. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if Pereira wins again, I don't think he's got the body of work necessarily to overtake Cormier. But I will say this: it begins to get a little bit more muddled, provided he wins on Saturday. Or to bare minimum, here's what I can say. People are starting to examine the question. Okay, John's got one, and he'll probably have it for time immemorial. However, who is number 2, and
Sure.
what would the power rankings look like? Again, I'm with you. I think Cormier probably still holds that position, but Pereira is doing something he's making us ask questions about a division that we would just like, oh, it's John Jones, and then it's just a bunch of whoever the fuck comes after.
No, I mean that's the disruption he's done through what, 10? Is it 10 UFC fights? I mean, is this the first time he reaches double digits in 3 years on UFC fights?
I'll double check that.
Yeah. In that 3 years, he's got 6 title fights. He's main evented MSG twice. He main evented UFC 300. He's bailing the company out here again. And I don't say that negatively against the company when you've got a guy who's willing to stand and deliver as the 36-year-old Pereira is, and then can get the job done. Considering he's done it so quickly and considering it's over 2 weight divisions, it is hard to make an apples-to-apples comparison to other fighters, although DC also won titles in 2 weight divisions. I just think it might be easy for people to try to discount what DC did because he never technically conquered Jones to get the success he did. But John Jones didn't have his shit together at a time DC did, and maybe it was him being a great teammate, or maybe he realized he's never getting through Kane anyway. So he cut down as a big man, which wasn't easy. And Luke, his defining wins, we're talking about absolute prime Gustafsson and 2 wins over Anthony Rumble Johnson. Just because both of those guys didn't end up winning the UFC title, they very could have in any era, including their own. I don't think it discounts what DC has done. DC is, to me, like the guy that's literally knocking on the door outside of the upper room in MMA history in terms of accomplishments. I think Pereira is making all of these conversations very interesting. And oh, by the way, Luke, the thing that we talked about recently, that what happens if Pereira does win again against Prochazka, and suddenly there is that sliver of window for a John Jones fight, which would not only shake up everything. The first 3 division champion, the idea that if you go in there and you beat the GOAT in his division, does that make you the GOAT? All I'm saying is Pereira's close to shaking up all of the arguments. But some of the wins he's got is happenstance, opportunity, timing. He's delivered, but it's almost too short of a window now to take this and try to compare him to everybody else. It's like saying, how do you compare Kurt Cobain to Paul McCartney? You don't, Luke. You don't.
You don't. Well, one's alive and one's not. But BC, I mean, he only has 3 fights at light heavyweight, and certainly in MMA. So Jan Blachowicz, he won via split. Then Yuri, he beat in round 2 at UFC 295, as we all know, on short notice. And then he beat, obviously, Jamal Hill on relatively short notice as well. And then here's this one. So, like, for me, 4 fights, 3 title wins. Those are great if he ends up getting there. But it's 2 against the same guy. It's a lot of last minute. I think people are trying to anoint him as like number 2 all time is really, really premature. But certainly he's on the path to doing really unusual things. And the thing that I come back to with Poatan is that we have a traditional version of what we measure as greatness, which is, body of work, length of time, blah, blah, blah. Poatan's coming in and just kind of skimming off the top, beating all of these like guys in these really important bouts in UFC title contests, and then moving on to the next one. And it's a new way of kind of evaluating what greatness looks like. So I'm with you. He still has work to do before we can anoint him number 2, or really even potentially number 3. Obviously Chuck Liddell or Randy Couture or guys like DC are probably going to be ahead of him, but it's something to keep an eye on, assuming he wins on Saturday, about where that conversation goes.
Maybe I say this because I saw a bit of the Hall of Fame from last night for International Fight Week, and some of our favorite names, Shogun, Joanna champion, getting in. I do feel like, Luke, it's almost heartbreaking. The sports history is so small. What is it, 31 years at this point, in terms of, recognizing MMA as a sport, and of course that's simultaneous with the UFC's run. But this happens in any sport where generational talents can get muted or forgotten as the next ones come. And maybe some of this argument is how the UFC doesn't necessarily go out of their way to like showcase the classics and the old guard and the champion. Some of that is, the bad relationship they have with Randy Couture, so they're not going to do that. But, even BJ Penn, even all these guys we're starting to look at, it's like, okay, they were great in their time, but what are they now? That breaks my heart as somebody who has been watching since the beginning to kind of see us like, because the fan base turns over so quickly. It's almost like you have to re-educate who GSP was and what he accomplished. It's interesting. Look, I wonder how many people that we talked about for 5 or 6 years as being one of the greatest will be further down that list only 5 years from now in terms of what we say about.
And Shogun entered the UFC Hall of Fame last night, which is fine, but I would actually still argue his best work was done in Pride, which of course UFC purchased, so it all counts. But if you're just talking about like best UFC light heavyweight, his resume is there is good. He had a title, but obviously it would be the broader body of work would put him higher in the conversation as well. So again, it's a lot of premature conversation around Poatan, but just a fun one to think about, Now
But
that
do you agree with that? Especially when we mentioned Liddell, that like we talk about him more about being the Mohawk face that they needed than everything he accomplished. I mean, it was just, most of our lives as fans, we looked at him as one of the biggest stars they ever had, and at worst, the second best in that division's history. Where will we be talking about him in the hierarchy in a few years? Is that like the eras change and evolve so quickly, Luke, that I feel like we're pushing all those people back almost too almost.
I mean, I tweeted about it today. Someone was like, they were making fun of people saying that Poatan hasn't fought a wrestler, and they're like, Max Holloway. They didn't say it quite this way, but they're like, Max Holloway has 0 wrestlers on his resume. It's like, dude, he stuffed 14 of 15 takedowns in a title fight against Frankie Edgar. And the response is, all right, well, Edgar was 37 in that bout. Yeah, fine. But you were saying he fought no wrestlers. That's absolutely not fucking true at all. Obviously, Edgar was a very, very good wrestler in college and in MMA as well. Also, he fought Ricardo Lamas. Also, he fought Dennis Bermudez. Like, he fought like several wrestlers along the way. So like, there's this weird thing that's happened where like, whatever time you arrive at the sport, anything that happened before that is like, minor and incidental, like history starts then, but it doesn't really. And so I don't really know how to answer the question about like how we will ultimately see Liddell. It's a fair one, but I get your point that like, yes, there's definitely, I mean, you have to be very careful about how you historically measure some of this stuff, especially with fans who are there for 5 years and then they grow out of it. And then a new crop of fans come in and then they grow out of it. And it's the same cycle over and over again. All right. In terms of the weirdness at yesterday's press conference, let's play this clip between Yuri and Alex, and I want you to react to it. This is about black magic.
Can you explain what you meant by what you believe Alex uses these shamans and spirits?
Yes, everybody knows that, and he's doing these rituals before the fight. Everybody can feel that, what's around him and what's going on. And I think Alex can't fight without that.
Bom, acho que todo mundo tem espírito, né? Acho que ninguém vive só com o corpo.
Right now, this is my challenge to him. If we can fight in a clear way in this case, yeah?
Se ele não acredita ou se ele não encontrou, né, o espírito dele, eu não tenho culpa.
Let the higher power be there in the cage to see who's the best in the world, in the performance, in the pure performance. That's all.
So that was from Media Day, not the presser, but they basically went over the same thing yesterday. BC, people love pro wrestling. That's really what this is, right?
Dude, it's what it is, but I have to say, it's rare that Dana White and I are in cahoots, but I don't know if you saw the interview he did with Oscar Willis of MacLife yesterday, but Dana was like giddy like a teenage schoolboy at this storyline. He's like, there's a million things that makes this fight fucking awesome. This storyline makes it even more. And I got to say, as Knuckle, as like meat-headed as the response as that is, I'm right there behind the dumpster at Arby's taking whippets with you, Dana. I'm right in on this, Luke. And it's like different from some of the weird ways in prize fighting that we've merged in spirituality and religious warfare. I don't know if you remember the build to Tyson Holyfield 1 and 2 was a lot of like Tyson representing the Muslim faith coming out of jail, Holyfield standing up for, Christ as his savior. And there was a lot of that back and forth in the same way it was white versus black when Cooney fought Holmes back in the day. But Luke, as much as I look at this more as comical, to get serious for a second, we all just laugh at this. But remember when Mystic Mac was running through people and calling his shots so perfectly? There were conversations, maybe not in podcasts or on ESPN TV, but I remember conversations of like, is Conor touching something that he shouldn't? Is he digging in the black magic? Because he's winning in ways that feel so similar to Tim Tebow and Jeremy Lin when they won in ways that we didn't think were possible for their skill set. So we said, look, it's got to be Jesus Christ lifting them above. And I get that this is wild and wacky to some people. But like, Luke, do you think there's anything to the success Pereira has? Has he found the right Shama spirit? I mean, what is really going on here? Look, I mean, it's pro wrestling, so I'm digging it. But
I saw Oscar Willis go, does Yuri think when Alex says Shama, he's saying shaman? One has to wonder. I mean, it's like, listen, the fight itself is really going to be, in all likelihood, as long as it lasts, probably really, really fun, really, really wild, right? So there's that. Yuri's got this outrageous personality where, he's sort of conjuring ancient Eastern mysticism along with, modern combative sensibility.
Well,
and
on that, did you hear that Dana said that he when he finds out he has a fight, he goes into a like little hut
3
in the
days,
woods
yeah.
for 3 days and does that Anthony Joshua thing with no, food, drink, or light. And they had to like knock on that shack and be like, dude, you're fighting Poatan on short notice. Like, this is these aren't real people, Luke. This is the weirdest sport ever. I mean, this is
Aaron Rodgers did it and said he had real smooth dumps. So don't knock it till you try it. That's all I'm saying. But listen, it just sort of feeds into this like larger than life personalities that fans and everyone else too kind of really loves and adores. And it adds a little bit of sauce and flair and weirdness and drama. This is really what people like about the fight game. This is what I mean. They like when we first got into MMA, what you wanted and what you saw, this is what people saw in The Ultimate Fighter. Not so much, obviously, these two guys, if they weren't around. But what I'm saying is people had never seen these outrageous personalities that to begin with. And then they would go and do this like crazy thing where they're fist fighting in a cage. It was like mind blowing for people. This is, obviously fans aren't new to this kind of thing, but I just mean it kind of feels like that. You're watching these crazy guys do crazy things, say crazy things, and it's all kind of fun and weird and harmless really at the same time. So it really kind of speaks to that. In terms of the fight itself, BC, I went back and I rewatched the first one, which did not last very long, just about a round and a half. I forget the exact minute.
It is a weird fight, right? It kind of just ended.
So it's a weird fight because on the feet, Poatan was leg kicking him brutally. And when they were at range or circling each other, Poatan really got the best of just about every exchange with two pretty big exceptions. When he backed up against the fence, Yuri found that chin more than a couple times and really put it on him. That was one. And the second one was obviously the takedown he got at the beginning of or I should say midway through the first round. Also, I know that there was some controversy about the stoppage, although I would remind everyone, whatever else you think and whatever else subsequently has been said at that post-fight press conference, Yuri had admitted he had gone out, at least for a brief moment during that exchange. So, like, people were asking, like, what to expect. These guys are both taking this one on short notice, but they have seen each other before. I expect it to look kind of like the first one, but with the big exception of I have no fucking idea how it ends. That part I just really can't. As long as they're at range, and Poatan's not backed up against the fence, he's gonna light Yuri on fire. But if Yuri can change that dynamic, it's anybody's fight.
You're right. Look, they both have 77-day turnarounds here. They both fought at UFC 300, scored resounding stoppage wins early on. So I don't think it's a huge advantage either way. Obviously, you have to take into account the fact that Poatan had a broken toe entering 300, broke a separate one. But I've seen videos where Glover Teixeira is saying he literally went from breaking the toe right back into training, never stopped, like mentally was maybe Chama. I love, by the way, Dana calls it Charmin when he's referencing it, which is just hilarious too. You know what I mean?
I just used Charmin before the show.
I mean, I've had religious experiences with Charmin too, Luke, after, a couple of China buffet incidents, but that's neither here nor there, nor racist, by the way. This just happened to be where it was, Luke, but that's the point.
Fair enough.
Look, this is going to be an absolute slugfest, but the first fight kind of ended out of nowhere, and whether you disagree with the stoppage at all, and again, I rewatched it and was like, had this new epiphany of like, man, they effed up that stoppage, and then I did remember that you reminded me that Yuri mentioned afterwards that he was out. But either way, I don't think we got a real feel, because it was sort of like there wasn't closure. I didn't see one guy dominate the other. Obviously, when Poatan catches you, and look, that's the real theme for me entering this rematch. I don't see a huge advantage on the short turnaround either way, or the experience of the first fight between the two. Prochazka still takes unnatural, reckless chances to set up these ridiculous, reckless strikes that you can't see coming, that are explosive. And he's willing to take big damage. But Luke, historically, if you were there to be hit against Poatan, the technique, the speed of that left hook, and just the damage it brings, he'll catch you. He'll end you. He did that to Prochazka the first time. So can Prochazka catch him? It's not like Poatan can't be hurt. I mean, we saw him dropped and stopped by Izzy in their MMA rematch. I just think, Luke, that the best bet on this card is take the under, because there is a natural reality that they both have the same short turnaround and they both bring knockout mentalities to it. But I just can't see Prochazka luring him into the type of battle that doesn't lead to Poatan landing his big left hook before Prochazka can hurt him. They're both capable of pure mayhem here. But look, you have to say something about the consistency in the short term of Poatan. He's getting hurt, but not injured enough to be out of action. He's so mentally dialed in. it's almost like he's walking around with that superhero veneer on him, like he can't be toppled at the moment, even though we saw him dramatically toppled by Izzy, yet he bounced back so fluidly from that. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, unless Yuri can change some things up about his lack of head movement or defense, this is the wrong guy to duel with or joust with and try to find who's got the bigger strike between the two of you. Because Yuri throws bombs, but Poatan needs one to end the fight.
I basically agree with that. Our friends at DraftKings have Poatan as a -142 favorite, but Yuri right on his heels at +120. Let me read you a stat very quickly, then we'll move on to some of the other fights. This is from our friend Richard Mann, as you like to call him, Dick Man. Yuri Prochazka has avoided only 41.6% of his opponent's significant strike attempts. You might be asking, what does that mean? That ranks him 172nd among ranked UFC fighters. The only ranked fighters with worse striking defense are Derek Lewis, Jailton Almeida, and Diego Lopes. But the Lopes one is such a small sample size. It's a little bit harder to say. So, like, statistically, he has some of the worst defense in the light heavyweight division in all of the UFC. That's a tough matchup for Poatan. However, you just mentioned it. At UFC 300, there was a moment there where Rakic was teeing off on him, and then he just lost. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely fucking crazy for as long as it lasts. I just hope that whoever wins and whatever stoppage comes our way, it's clean. That's the only thing I really hope for the sake of the division and either guy.
I mean, is the fan in you kind of hoping here? Like, we don't know if it's possible that a Poatan-John Jones heavyweight matchup happens. A lot of things need to happen. John has to agree to stay on. Somehow the UFC would have to F over Aspinall on even triple levels that we never imagined. But, like, is the same pro wrestling fan in me that's like, yeah, Black Magic. Let's see who can bring out their bigger god here and does the ridiculousness. Do you say the same thing about the rare hope of Poatan getting this chance against John? Do you want that to unfold?
I want John to fight the winner of Blades and Aspinall, but I'm assuming that if Blades wins, who the fuck knows? You know what I mean? Like, I'll say this. If Blades wins, I do want John to fight him, but there's no way he will. Like, that just won't happen.
See, I think he'd be more apt to fight Blades than Aspinall.
In the sense of unifying the title, but like Blades as an opponent doesn't carry a ton. I mean, obviously beating Aspinall would be big, but doesn't carry a ton of momentum. And like, he's not gonna sell a lot of pay-per-views. Dude, Poatan would sell. I've been having this conversation on my live chat, and people were like, "How can Robert Whittaker jump the queue against Sean Strickland?" I mean, they could fight, but obviously Sean doesn't want it. And so, how would Robert Whittaker jump the queue? Because to Sean's point, you can argue he beat DDP. I mean, you can argue that Rob beat Whittaker, but also he did beat Izzy, and Whittaker never did. Sean beat him, so he's like, I'm ahead in the queue. Fair enough, but like when you look at the broader scope of what defines title shots, it's obviously what you've done, but have you done the UFC a solid? How much do they like you? Are you relevant to a geographic territory? Where does it fit in the calendar? There's just a lot of other factors that go into it. And if you're John Jones and your choice are Blades for interim title or just, a super fight, whatever the fuck you want to call it, against Poatan, dude, he's going to pick Poatan 10 times out of 10. Whether or not he should, or whether or not you or I want to see it, he will.
Blades wouldn't have as much money in the bank to argue for an immediate unification if he won. But the problem here is, what if Aspinall wins? That really is a problem that's going to be hard to overcome.
If Aspinall wins, John has to fight him, and that's just the end of it. I mean, that's completely,
Okay, so no one's mentioning this though. Why do we have to have John in this scenario? I mean, it's better because he's the greatest fighter of all time. But let's say John wins and retires. Does Poatan still seek that potential history against Aspinall, in your opinion, or would it not be worth it as much because the golden goose of Jones isn't there?
I still think if Aspinall wins against Blades and John hangs it up, that's still the biggest fight Poatan could have. Yeah. Right. And everyone's clowning Jamal Hill about like the fact that he is seemingly like kind of insecure about how this whole thing went. But he's also drumming up a lot of interest. I guarantee it. If he can get his way back to a title fight, like that actually would be, I think, a rematch that people would want to see, assuming that Hill can win his way back. So there's some options there. But like, dude, you just have to ask yourself, if you're Poatan, you have limited time in the sport, you beat Yuri here, and let's see whatever happens after that. He might take some time. what's the biggest fight you can make? If Aspinall's the guy standing there, it's fucking him. But all right, we got to move this one along here.
In London? Yeah, let's do that, please.
Okay, so we go to the co-main event, BC. Let me just point this out. You have MVP and Ian Gary. You have Macy, say her last name?
Chazon
versus Mayra Bueno Silva. You have Roman Dolidze, Anthony Smith. Mayra, you're right. And then Diego Lopes and Brian Ortega. Every single fighter on the main card is either a plus or minus 100. There are no plus or minus 200s in either direction or above. It's all super, super close. So people like picking on this card. That's what I mean. Do you love every fight? No, I don't love every fight. Smith versus Dolidze is competitive. Do I need to see it? Not necessarily. I realize how we got here. It's fine. But I'm just saying, like, these are competitive ass fights. All right. Ortega and Lopes. We had a moment here. Let's take a look at Diego Lopez's hair here for just a second, if we can. Just look at that shit. Just look at that shit. BC, he's got, I'm not even joking, he's got an emo comb-over burst fade mullet. I mean, dude.
I mean, there are elements of so many different people in one haircut. It's incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. But I have to say, on the ground, should it go there, tell me how you feel. Here's how I kind of size this up. Again, both guys taking it on short notice. Who the fuck knows, right? On the feet, Lopes is just much more active, throws, I think, more volume, and is just really looking to play a certain kind of speed chess in ways that Brian Ortega is a little bit more methodical. On the ground, however, I could see much more rapid exchanges. However, I'm of the belief that Lopes, certainly brings a lot of intensity no matter the phase, but I still kind of feel like Brian Ortega has more proven jiu-jitsu at the elite level. So tell me how you see this matchup going such that it ever hits the ground.
I think ultimately they'd cancel each other out. It would be interesting to see if either one is going to commit a certain amount of gas tank to the idea of trying to have success on the ground, or do they feel that immediate pushback and go, no, let's bring this fight elsewhere. I just still, as I try to handicap this, he's one of my favorite fighters, so I feel like I can look at the joy that Brian Ortega brings me in fights because he's never out of the fight. He can make a war with anyone, but you begin to go, okay, but is that giving him his best shot? There's an element that keeps Ortega around in fights because he is so durable that if you make a mistake late, I mean, look, Yair was piecing him up in their rematch, and it really started to look like Brian Ortega was closer to retirement than anything else because he gets hit so easily and dropped. But he lingered. He showed you that adaptability on the ground, that doggedness, and he was able to force a submission out of nowhere that really revitalized his placement. I know he's been kept high up in the rankings in ways that he doesn't necessarily deserve due to his inactivity and really lack of success of late at the highest level outside of that Yair rematch win. But I think the ground games cancel each other out. And to me, it comes down to, can Diego Lopes quickly get Brian Ortega off script and get him into a war and get him into mano-a-mano and leaning on his chin? If he can do that, Luke, I think a Lopes breakthrough stoppage win in the first half of the fight is very much in play here. And that's me telling you that I think, skill for skill, experience for experience, there's a lot of ways I think Brian Ortega can win this fight and can still be in this fight late. I just think it might be Lopez's time and moment. He's got the mindset. And Luke, isn't it interesting that even though he's from Brazil, he lives and trains out of Puebla, Mexico, and really carries a lot of that Mexican fighting spirit in a lot of ways, yet can obviously fully handle himself on the ground from a jiu-jitsu aspect. I just think the timing has met the preparation and the mindset and the opportunity perfectly here for Lopes, where he gets to go as the 14th ranked guy against a perennial name here in a last-minute co-main event spot on one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year. And I do think the minuses that are still very prevalent in Ortega's game can be activated by Lopes, where I'm not even caring about what happens on the ground, Luke, because I think he can break through and stop Ortega. It might be a flash stoppage, but I think he can put on that flush pressure to get Ortega down.
Ortega's got a chin, though.
He does, Luke. He does over time, and certainly to get out of really gnarly situations. But I don't know. Lopes puts fury together with these combinations and the way that he brings offense. Really, it's up to Ortega. What do you make? What if you've taken it all in? And Ortega's, by the way, donating a ton of his check to his church. Yeah. He's gone through a spiritual kind of rebirthing. He's gotten married. He's such a wild card. What are your expectations mentally for Brian Ortega? Because that obviously dictates physically what you're going to see.
I mean, I think I'm going to look at two different stats that kind of show, if not weaknesses, just places that the other guy might try and push the fight a little bit. How about that? So if you look at one thing that really, neither guy has great striking defense statistically. I just want to point that out. They both have negative differentials by a considerable distance. Ortega's is worse. Strikes absorbed per minute for Ortega, 6.54, dude. That is just insanely fucking high. Insanely high. So I really wonder how that might play out in the striking department. If Lopes really wants to put the pressure on him there. On the other hand, if you look at takedown defense, now let me explain what this means, but the takedown defense of Diego Lopes is just 42%. And a lot of that comes from, fighting Movsar Evloev. So that's a little bit misleading. I don't think that Ortega has takedowns like that. And also a guy like Lopes, you can take him down and then he's just good off of his back. So like, what does that really mean? Nevertheless, if you're Brian Ortega, I think you might say, well, my top jiu-jitsu is going to be better than his bottom. So then why don't we see how that's pursued? It limits how much damage you take. You can Movsar has shown if you've got good submission defense and then, requisite wrestling, you can kind of take it there a little bit. So I don't want to, it's so unpredictable and so wild. By the way, our friends at DraftKings have Lopes as a slight favorite, -135 to Ortega at +114. I kind of feel like they're going to home in on their vulnerabilities at least early. But I honestly feel like it might devolve into any kind of direction after a round and a half. That's the part to me that I just can't say. I don't know. A little bit weird.
Expectations are huge from an entertainment standpoint. From the standpoint that somebody's going to get a big win that's going to catapult themselves. What do you see as the viable stakes for each guy? Like how big of a fight can either get with a breakthrough win?
Lopes would get the biggest win of his career doing this. Ortega, I don't know if he meaningfully changes his situation, although if it's a big win, he might be able to get a big opponent at 55 from this, right? But he would still be a little bit far back in the queue.
So isn't that what he revealed? That he was in training camp at the moment for a fight at lightweight. Who do you think it was against? Did we ever find that out?
I don't think we did find that out, no. Or at a bare minimum, a move to 55. I don't know if they had really homed in on an opponent just yet, but you get my point. Like this one is really wild, really unpredictable. You can see some vulnerabilities that each of them have, or at least some tendencies that the other could exploit, but it's just hard to know how this one's going to go. I'll say this. Ortega has beaten, we think, better fighters than Lopes. Lopes has not beaten anyone to this point as good as Ortega, which isn't to say that he won't, but there is a bit of a difference experientially heading into this contest. It could play a role. Something to pay attention to. BC, Anthony Smith and Roman Dolidze are locking horns in a fight that, again, not a lot of people care about. Roman Dolidze, a slight favorite, by the way, on DraftKings, -148 to Anthony Smith's +124.
I'm very surprised by that.
I'm a little surprised by that, too. Smith's the natural light heavyweight. He's good on the ground. Dolidze is good on the ground, too, but I would actually argue Smith's probably better, naturally a little bit bigger. Fought better competition also as well, for whatever that's worth. But Smith had something to say about, what would you say, BC, how he's kind of avoided by other folks in that division. This is from Media Day.
Him moving up says a lot about my division. So if you guys want to do your jobs, go ask every available light heavyweight why there's a middleweight fighting this fight. They're going to make up a bunch of shit, but I think you guys can read between the lines. Every single one of them said no. So, I'm the veteran, I'm the gatekeeper, like whatever those guys say. Well, why does Anthony get paid so much? And why does he get this opportunity? And why does he do this? Because I'm willing to do this shit that you guys won't do. Me fighting a middleweight on Saturday proves that to everybody. So I think all those guys just got exposed.
Do people actually bring up your pay, like you said? Like, why is Anthony getting
paid? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like fellow fighters?
Yeah, we hear that shit in the back all the time.
Like fellow fighters saying that?
Oh, yeah. It's weird, right? Yeah, it's very weird. Yeah, it's very weird. Like, what if you guys were out there arguing about who makes more money? That'd be fucking weird, right?
BC?
Yeah, Luke, you're well overpaid for the kind of bullshit you bring to the table there. I will say this, Luke. We can clown at times at Anthony's sort of never-ending alpha responses to things, but he is mentally freaking tough, and that's a big reason why he's still here, still viable. And at the end of the day, I think this is what he needs to motivate himself. I'm okay with it. Do you think it's true though? Are people actively going out of their way not to fight him that are looking to crash the party in the standings? Or is this just his way of being like, man, I'm the man. Look at me. I will go where no one else will go.
First of all, I find it hilarious that fighters apparently do care about fighter pay, just not in a way you would ever imagine. I thought that they just didn't care at all, but apparently behind the scenes, they'll complain about it. They certainly won't do that any other place.
No, only the scumbag MMA media will, Luke, because they hate UFC.
Just us. So what I was going to say is, that aside, I mean, Smith on short notice is, I think, a tougher opponent than people necessarily realize. And even I had kind of been like, oh, well, Vitor Petrino is just going to run right over him, and then just fucking didn't, right? Smith's kind of dangerous. Remember, he subbed Volkan Oezdemir. He subbed Alexander Gustafsson, if memory serves, as well. And that was before Gustafsson was truly washed. I mean, he wasn't the same, I recognize, but he wasn't completely
he was damp, Luke. He was pretty damp.
Yeah, he was on his way out, but that was, I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a 4th round submission. And also, I think Smith went into that one. Let me double check that one. I believe Smith was the underdog at that time. Let me see here. He was against Gustafsson. Yeah, Gustafsson closed that fight. So that fight opened with Gustafsson as a minus 245 favorite. It closed at minus 335 for Gustafsson. So people being like, oh, well, he was washed. Really? The odds makers thought he was definitely going to win. And Anthony Smith wound up fucking snatching his neck. So that's the thing.
Smith went through that run of like beating old Hua, old Rashad, right? It was sort of like, so people were discounting him. But look, at this point, or really in general, he's kind of been the perfect definition of gatekeeper, where if you aren't quite ready, he can find that exposure and get you out of there. But the problem becomes, Luke, when he goes to the elite level since the John Jones fight, it's not just that he loses, but he takes a beating in that process. So, yeah, he is a tough out. He's a tough out for Dolidze. In fact, I think betting-wise, you would favor Smith here. As much as we say Dolidze has a good ground game, Luke, I think Smith is better, and I think Smith can finish him potentially there as well.
Also, interesting to note, both guys are 35 years old. Anthony Smith, 35 years, 11 months, 3 days. Roman Dolidze, 35 years, 11 months, 2 weeks. So I didn't realize Dolidze was that old, by the way. That's actually a little bit surprising. I didn't realize it was that close.
That's true. But the gap in experience and certainly the gap in mileage comes out huge. But Luke, let's be honest. The Roman Dolidze experiment in the UFC after that 3 or 4 fight win streak, which really kind of put him on the verge of legitimate contention, it's been disappointing because he comes close to showing you the consistency of top level skills, but still has holes, still has vulnerabilities, still can't seem to get it. I don't hate him rolling the dice, moving back up to light heavyweight and kind of just seeing what he can get opportunistically here. But we do kind of need to see, and you mentioned his age, we kind of need to see whether he's going to figure this out or not.
I agree. But coming up on short notice, up a weight class against a guy who's got pretty good subs. I will say this, Roman Dolidze also has pretty good ground and pound, pretty aggressive ground and pound. So I think he probably has more, probably better wrestling, although we'll have to see how that translates at 205. But definitely, I understand the odds. I understand them being close anyway. There might be some value at Smith at plus 124. So just something to think about. BC, Macy Chazon, and Myra Bueno Silva, it's a pick'em. DraftKings has Macy at minus 115. They've got Bueno Silva at minus 105. I'm
surprised they're giving Macy that much respect. I mean, she's a tough fighter, but she has yet to prove, in my opinion, that
she's big for the weight class, though.
What'd you say?
She's big for the weight class.
For sure. She's got a good ground game. She's tough as nails. I just haven't seen that she can do this. I think the bigger questions obviously are about MBS here. Is that what we call her? Mayra Bueno Silva, who had the flashes where she looked like she was absolutely ready to potentially steal the title and make a run, and then really came up. I mean, look, I cannot get over, I don't want to say the stain she put on herself, but to not be able to come over the top against Rocky Pennington in that title fight when there really just wasn't anything going on in that title fight, right? We maligned it for the right reasons. That was such a disappointing effort from Silva that, maybe there's lingering sentiment in that from the odds makers. Still, this is her fight not only to win, I think to do it. If she's not of this ilk, if this was all sort of just timing that she fell into the title picture in a shallow division, which could be the case, this is a show us who you really are type of fight for me. And I'll say this about Bueno Silva, Luke. I kind of like the interviews or where she does these press things, because every time she's listening to the questions, she seems so like confused and not in like what, but then halfway through it, she just starts to get angry. She's intense, Luke. She's very intense, and I think she's explosive enough to handle herself well in this fight. But you got to really look in the mirror after her inability to find success, cardio in that 5-round title fight with Pennington.
She faded bad in that fight.
I mean, this is it's almost worse than Aldana in the same division against Nunes in the way that she went out in that fight.
Yeah, that was pretty bad too. Bad in a different way, because she just never really pulled the trigger and got kind of beat up on the outside for as long as it lasted. I'll just say this: Bueno Silva sitting at 3, Chazon sitting at 7. So she could jump into the top 5, be a fresh contender for the winner of Raquel Pennington, Juliana Pena, which is seemingly announced or reported on yesterday.
Just get that fight over with. We need that fight to move along. Look, here's what I'm saying about women's bantamweight right now.
By the way, that'll be a UFC 307 in Utah, I think.
Women's bantamweight has really been, I don't want to say, it's been in trouble. It's been almost on life support. Amanda cleaned it out. All credit to her. But there wasn't really anything going on. There's 2 fighters. There's 2 fighters right now in one fight that really, really matters. And that's Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison, for not only to sort out their history as former teammates. You'd hope that a title is at stake. If you're UFC, you need to speed up the process in getting us to that fight. Now, look, it may not get there, right? That's the beauty of the sport. But let's get Pennington back into action. Let's get Pena out of the way in terms of finding out whether she's staying around or going. And let's get to the idea of Kayla versus Amanda, because it's business. The window's open for it. Amanda seems ready and she wants it. I just we're sitting here trying to go like, who comes out of this? Are they closer to a title? There's 2 people that can, 2.5. I'll give Pena her credit. What she did against Amanda the first night, I'm not going to take it away from her. There's 2.5 people here, Luke, who can operate at the elite level in this division right now. Let's move it along to get there.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this fight. It's on the card. We'll see how it goes. It's relevant. I get that the UFC needs to keep the division moving. It's fine, but it doesn't really do anything for me. Which takes us now, BC, to MVP and Ian Gary. Ian Gary yesterday going after MVP left and right, accusing his coach of trying to get information from one of his either coaches or training partners, paying money for it. Said he was going to be suspended. I don't know by whom he would be suspended and what for exactly, because I don't think anything he did was commission eligible for suspension. So I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about, but it certainly ratcheted up the tension yesterday. What did you make of their back and forth?
I like this right now. So look, Ian Machado Gary, in my opinion, in the last 2 fights and everything that surrounded the really kind of disgraceful back and forth with Colby Covington and then Sean Strickland. And then suddenly it became cool for everybody to talk about him, Gary being a cuck and they want to sleep with his wife and the ex guys living in there. It became a bad soap opera. It was one of the worst PR turns for somebody who has legitimate potential to be a critical and commercial star. I know he's, admittedly too much in the make of being a McGregor 2.0 and a copycat. But Luke, he's talked this week about people said the same thing about Kobe in comparison to MJ. Now that also made people laugh because right now it's easy to hate on Gary. But I really like his reaction this week in particular, not just in the press conference, how he seemed to come armed, ready to take down MVP, shoot down Paige's confidence, show him that, look, you tried some gamesmanship. We sniffed it out. You're not going to do that to me. I kind of like the way Gary's basically been like, look, I know you all hate me, but I'm still coming to be great. I'm still on my way to fulfill my potential and be a global star. I'm going to walk through this guy and show you. And Luke, it's like he's making the best of a shitty PR situation that in a lot of ways I think he contributed to. But now I'm starting to see this guy mature in new ways in front of our eyes. Look, I believe in his game. I don't know if he's fully going to get there and win the title, but I also don't think he's a fraud. This is the perfect fight against a really tough style and the perfect time because MVP's coming in for a short time at age 37, but he showed against Kevin Holland that he is very, very tough. I think this is the perfect week and the perfect matchup for Ian Gary to fully mature, get out of the stage he was in, and particularly with his game, do something big here, do something demonstrative. So, Luke, this is kind of like, and maybe it was him wearing an all-black tight suit here at the press conference. This is kind of like him turning from that whiny-ass son of Anakin, Luke Skywalker, who just wants to fly planes and can't figure out that he's the chosen one. But remember in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, when he's dressed in all black and he's chopping up Jabba and he's like, damn, this kid's a badass. Forget about the historical nature of the Skywalker family being absolute bitches. Yes. I mean, Luke, Anakin was an old bitch before he became the coolest guy ever. Well,
Fucking
this might be
he's
part
a
of
loser ass hoe.
this is part of Gary's transformation. Are you feeling that within the, oh yeah, we're programmed to hate Ian Gary, he's kind of come across as cool and ready for prime time lately?
Cool is a strong word. I don't think he's cool, but I don't hate him either. And I find a lot of the hate just kind of like, sad groupthink from sexless losers. So, but I will say also some of it is deserved, right? He is very overexposed and hasn't proven nearly as much as he has been hyped. And so I do understand some of the pushback in that sense. So I'm with you in the argument that like he's got a real, I mean, I think, part of the matchmaking here is just what they could put together versus like what's the exact appropriate fight at the right time. However, what I would say is it is an awkward fight. It's MVP, is a difficult style matchup depending on your level of ability. The matchmakers look to me like they're trying to figure out, okay, problem solve here. Let's see what you can actually do, because he's an outfighter himself, right? Sort of fights long range at kickboxing. He got a couple takedowns against Neil Magny, but in general tends to fight on the outside, which could be a problem against MVP. Not so much for getting hit per se, but just in not there being a lot of offense to go around. That's at least one way it could go. On the other hand, if he can show us different wrinkles to his game and then again, real problem solving ability, to your point, he can actually do something and really elevate himself. However, if he earns a boring ass decision out of this, I mean, the mockery is only going to continue, if not get substantially worse over time. So it really has some interesting stakes here about how he'll be received and what will be possible for him given the matchup.
Well, can we
BC?
receive this video of his son, Luke? Because this is brilliant stuff.
His son is, by the way, seems like just the cutest kid. This is from yesterday. I don't know if it was before or after the presser, but it was backstage. Here we go.
Como faz o Conor McGregor? Como faz Poaton? Olha, mãos para alto e grita. Como faz o Max Holloway?
Down.
Como faz o Max... You want to do this? Let's go! This kid is awesome. I'm fine. Back down.
Sorry, that was the fighter meeting, but nonetheless, that kid is amazing, right? Cute kid.
That is great. That is great. I mean, look, I think that moment also, it's kind of humanizing to some degree, Ian Machado Gary, but you mentioned the right word, overexposure. He brought too much hype upon himself. Now it's time to go out there and earn it. So, Luke, what MVP did to Holland, he like muted his offense, froze him, because I think MVP, the hype was big coming to the UFC. He dialed up his game. He was ready. But he can still mesmerize and freeze guys who are not on his level. What happens, though, when he meets guys who are on his level? Like when he met Douglas Lima in that fight in which MVP was knocked out in that $1 million tournament. Suddenly, it can mute MVP's offense. Do you think Ian Gary, while we expect this to be a hunt and peck sort of chess match on the feet, do you think he can mute MVP's offense and do to him what he's trying to do, in reverse? Because once you do that to MVP, it's hard to hit him clean, but you're not, when you can limit his offense, it's hard for him to win rounds that way.
So I'm not skeptical that Gary can win. I am skeptical, or at a bare minimum, wait and see approach about whether or not he can really hurt MVP. You know what I mean? Like, if you had to ask me, what's the most plausible scenario that Gary wins? I'm going to say a mix of either being all the way out or a takedown, like, mash him up against the fence, try to get on top. That kind of a thing. Not really dynamic, putting it on him offense. So to your point, if he can go out there and really hurt him, really stick it to him, that would do wonders for him. It would be incredible because, again, it's not just did you beat a difficult guy, it's show us this like offensive dynamism. He has been well-rounded and crafty and tricky a little bit, but he's not been a juggernaut. Like Shavkat Rakhmonov is a fucking juggernaut. Gary has not exactly been that, right? Although he's saying he wants Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm like, dude.
Gary said he wants them all. He said, bring Covington next, bring Shavkat. He's like, I'm telling you, I want
Covington,
to be great.
sure. Rakhmonov is a very bad idea for him, but at least at this stage. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking to see. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Gary wins. And again, our friends at DraftKings have him a slight favorite, -155 to Michael Page's +130. It's just a question more of what will he look like if he gets it done, and what does that say about the ultimate upside of his game? This is an interesting one in that sense.
Can you slow MVP down with calf kicks, or does that
Yes.
leave you open to be countering big?
It does leave you open to be countered, but again, dude, everything about leg kicking is really, really important, obviously, in MMA, which is, I'm not saying anything at all interesting. But one thing that you begin to realize is a lot of times people really, including good fighters, and again, the heat of the battle, this will happen. But I have noticed, I've been paying attention more to how leg kicks are set up. And I just don't feel like a lot of people really set up leg kicks all that well in MMA, even at high levels. There are obviously some exceptions to that kind of a thing. I'm curious to see how Gary does it here. Like, for example, here's like a general rule. You know, if your opponent is marching into you, it's not to say you cannot leg kick, but you have to really be careful with that, because that is typically how you get countered in the boxing range. They'll just step into your kicking range as they're moving into you, and that's how you get kind of clipped. So it's one of those situations where if your opponent is still, or if they're backing up, it's actually a lot, from a context standpoint, it's a lot safer. That's a very basic way to look at it. And again, there are exceptions in every direction, but something like that, I want to see to what extent he can really set that up, hit and not be hit. But again, it's more than that. What kind of dynamism does he have to his offense? You can make an argument Rakhmonov gets hit a little bit too much following that Jeff Neal fight, but you cannot argue he doesn't have, dude, he has nothing but finishes. He is obviously dynamic, right?
Well, I do want to see Gary get hit here. I do want to see him get the best of MVP and see how his chin responds, see how he's able to react. A lot of potential here, potential for it to be a boring sort of, stalking match as well. But I think we're going to learn a lot about Gary. And Luke, you know what? The clip that him and his wife get a lot of issue for is that picture of the whole team hugging him in the locker room, but she's hugging him so passionately with like her face against his ass and like whatever. It is similar to the drunken hug you gave me at the end of the 3 Margarita show in Vegas. And, I haven't necessarily held that against you. So maybe it's time that we all take it easy on the Machados.
Yeah. Maybe we stop obsessing over someone's private life that in all actuality, we know nothing about. Maybe we should stop being sexless losers on the internet and go get your own Hawk Tua treatment. I'm telling you.
We just previewed a Roman Dolidze fight, and I didn't say Cheyenne's name once. So why don't you?
Well, you just did. You kind of ruined it. But at the same point, I'm just being like, guys, you don't know anything about his life, no matter what you think you know. You can dislike him for being overexposed or annoying or whatever. All that's completely fair game. But you don't know shit about this guy's life. Leave him alone on that level.
Out of the DMs, yo.
All right, BC. Very quickly. I'm going to tell you my favorite fight on the prelim card. Tell me if you agree or disagree. I'm going to go Andre Fili, Cub Swanson.
Yes.
Cub Swanson, is up against it. He's a plus 195 underdog. Andre Fili minus 238. I don't know how this one's going to go. It seems like it might go Fili's way, but it's going to be a fucking banger as long as that one lasts. No doubt about it.
It absolutely will, Luke. And speaking of banging, how about that quote from Touchy Feely? How about the man after your heart? Do we have that? Do you have that?
I don't have that one. I can read it to you though. You want me to pull it out here?
I have it right here. I'll read it. This was a quote from Media Day put out there by MMA Orbit. He says, I think it's the thing that unites us all, right? Every red-blooded adult male, we like big butts, just big Latin butts. In this time of turmoil, I think it's good to have something that unites us all. Luke, they used to say that about Morning Kombat. Now, apparently, it's the asses of women born near or below the equator. Correct?
I've been trying to tell everyone. but they just don't want people want to come to the truth slowly and the hard way. But I've been trying to help you all. I really have been.
There you go. Luke, I got to bring up the featured prelim about middleweights. Joe Pyfer's back, and he lost a 5-round bout to Jack Hermanson. That was supposed to be his sort of crossover from the guys that have big-time potential to the guys that are settling it right now at the top of the division. Bounce back from the first UFC defeat will come in the form of Marc-Andre Barriault, which is a tough matchup. What are your expectations for Joe Pyfer at 27? Because he got that big push coming out of Dana White Contender Series. He's tough as nails. But he really wasn't able to impress in the moment that he was supposed to. It happens to a lot of UFC fighters. What are you expecting on the bounce back here? Do you want to be like Joe Pyfer or not, Luke?
I would like to see, again, what cost him last time. He was going for broke kind of early, didn't manage his resources, And then his defense really wasn't improved either. Barrio is beatable, but you can't take him lightly. So this is, to me, a question of less ability from Joe Pyfer and more management, how he manages his resources, how he manages the strategy. He's a favorite here. He is a pretty substantial one, minus 290. Marc-Andre Barrio at plus 235. So it's the question of mature. This is what I mean. Like he's got ability. It's a question of maturation. That's sort of where I'm looking at it on this one. You anything different?
Yeah, no, same thing here. I'd like to see him get it back on track. I like when guys learn their lessons when they lose their big close-ups and they figure out what parts of their game need to be filled right now, whether that's 5-round cardio or what have you. In this case, defense would be a big thing here for Pyfer, but they did put him back in a showcase spot as the lead into the pay-per-view. So let's see what kind of thunder he can bring, because look, no one's talking really, to be fair, about him or this matchup within the much bigger storylines that have been taken over. But this is a good ass fight. Swanson Feely right before it is at featherweight. What do you say about the rest of the card? I mean, we could say, hey, Andrei Arlovsky's back for the 1500th time, which is cool, but like, I don't know if I'm tuning in that early, Luke.
I'll just go through this very quickly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Arlovsky's done a lot in his career. I'm not necessarily looking forward to the fight per se, but I'm not going to bash him. Waterson Gomez versus Jillian Robertson might be fun on the ground for as long as that one lasts. The one I really got my eye on, obviously Ricky Simone there too, but the one I really got my eye on is Ray Saruya. Ray Saruya out of Japan taking on Carlos Hernandez. Ray Saruya is undefeated, a top prospect out of Japan if ever there was one. He's not ready for prime time yet. He's on the prelim card for a reason. But if you're asking me, like, who are some prospects early in their development, but still very, very good, worth watching, Ray Saruya is very much worth your time. He is super fucking talented. Really like his game. He currently sits as a minus 470 favorite over the plus 360 Carlos Hernandez. So that's the one I've got. Also, BC, very quickly, Peyton Talbot, who has really captured people's imagination, in part because he doesn't act like a meathead. And so meathead people have no idea how to interpret the fact that he is not traditionally masculine in that way. But, dude, listen to this. His opponent, Giannis Gumori. Talbot is a minus 1,600 favorite over Giannis Gumori at plus 900. You just don't see UFC fights with odd disparities like that very often. Extremely rare. Partly just a function of the matchmaking, obviously, but yeah. Jesus, that's a huge
that is
spread.
Incredible. Breaking news related to this card. John Anik reporting from the UFC weigh-in show that Diego Lopes versus Brian Ortega has now been bumped up to a 155-pound fight. So we would assume one of the two had trouble cutting that down, Luke, at the last minute. So that is an interesting turn of events for a last-minute fight. Understood in this circumstance. They're going to bang either way, so let's let them do that. But yeah, I mean, I was also thinking during your rant, Luke, how like the lighting for some reason in this room does not make my teeth look yellow. I almost look Yanni the Greek in this setup, right? Like I'm just right, like I just open my mouth and the heavens play the harp and the horns, right? You know what I mean?
Dude, you know who's got teeth like that was David Benavidez too. He's got some
he's got new teeth and they just shine out of there.
They're a porcelain up in them shits.
I'm excited. I'll be hitting up post 303 on the old CBS Sports HQ machine. Luke, are you hitting some solo channel business this weekend?
Yeah, I'll have a post-fight show on my channel after the fight, so you can come join me after that. Okay, BC, let's go through some of these other pieces of news that we have, all a little bit smaller in detail. Let's talk about the Sphere. So you and I went to the Dead and Company show when we were out there for the Tank Davis fight. And like we both, I mean, your experience was a little bit more religious than mine, but I couldn't even imagine saying one bad thing about that show other than I had to go with you. Other than that, it was tremendous. So we didn't get to see the inside of the Sphere for how it's going to look, which really is the most important part. But we did get a sneak peek on some of the graphic packages and the branding, which we'll talk about here on the outside. Let's take a look at what that is, and then I want you to react. So you get the idea there. BC, I got to say, we'll talk about the branding in just a moment, which is like Riyadh season, UFC Noche 2, UFC 306. It's really complicated. But the graphics packages, like this Aztec kind of almost like machinery kind of look that they put together.
Oh, badass.
Fucking awesome. It looks awesome.
It is, but I don't. We got to do this right in order. The backlash from the announcement, when we already knew Turkey Al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, which has put so much money into so many different sports, has changed boxing, trying to change golf. We know they've sponsored that event. So we knew that was going to happen. Yet I have to say, when it hit, because remember, the last month, we saw Dana initially say that the Sphere was going to be all about Mexico and Noche. And then the narrative coming out of UFC Brass was suddenly that it wasn't, that it was just going to be, we're going to focus on the Sphere. That led me to believe it was heavy Saudi Arabia influence. Now we're going back. We're just saying, buffet, everybody's here. Here, this is Riyadh season presents UFC Noche. And Dana's all saying this is going to be the biggest night in Mexican fighting history. Everyone should want to be on this card. Look, I'm not as, deeply intrinsically into either side nationalistically at all, Luke. People know I'm a Lithuanian French-Canadian mix and really ignorant on top of that. But I did get a lot of serious MMA fans of this show who are Mexican and are like, Noche was our celebration, and now it's presented by Saudi Arabia. Now, in one case, Luke, it's a sponsor. This is the first sponsored event at the Sphere. I think this is the first time a UFC pay-per-view has been so outrightly sponsored, rather than, Mickey's malt liquor across the center of the cage, Matt. So this could be just as easily like Pepsi or, whatever presents. But what do you make about that? Because I get people in my DMs like legitimately saying, look, I go to all the big cards. I was ready to go to this. Now I want nothing to do with this. Is that selective outrage? Because, saying I don't want to be part of anything that has to do with Saudi Arabia. Well, some people think the same way about Donald Trump being sent out to the cage, Luke, in pomp and circumstance. I mean, there's already a lot of weirdness going on in the UFC, depending on which side of the lines you lean on. Is this a slap in the face to Mexican MMA fans, or should we shut up? This is sponsorship money. Let's get out of the way.
There is an article. I want to give a shout out. Do you know who Zach Arnold of Fight Opinion is? No. So he long time voice in MMA, had his own site, Fight Opinion, still up, I believe. He writes now for the MMA Draw, which is like the Substack that a lot of the former Bloody Elbow employees kind of took over. Nate Wilcox runs it, so shouts to him as well. He has made a very trenchant observation. And what he has argued is if you actually look at who TKO through UFC and WWE, who their clients are, the clients are not the fans. It's almost become a B2B business, which is to say, for example, is it my understanding, BC, that TKO announced a deal with Lucas Oil Stadium and Indianapolis to bring, I think it was like several
2 nights
events.
of SummerSlam, 2 nights of WrestleMania, and a Royal Rumble all in the same stadium over like the next
right years. And part of that is related to the tourism board there, or you can look at Utah pulling people or pulling UFC in, or even now
Houston made that big deal with the UFC 2 years ago.
Exactly. And then also you now have Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Like, look at where the UFC is getting their money, and TKO more broadly. They're getting money from essentially becoming government contractors. That is where they're getting. And I've been trying to explain this to people. I dare anybody. Show me the monopoly that over time served consumer interest well. People keep thinking that like, oh, well, NFL is a monopoly, right? But they've got a legal exemption. Plus, due to that, they have to have a union by which they have to agree with. There's nothing like that here. It's totally different. And so the point I'm trying to make here is like there's not much more they can do to make MMA what it is, but they can find new ways to extract wealth from the consumer base, or in this particular case, through government contracting. That is what you are watching here. You are watching them work with either civic, municipal businesses, state, federal, or other countries to generate substantial amounts of money, either through branding or event location or some combination of the two, to now bring this to bear for an extra source of revenue. Like, I realize that they have spent $20 million already on the show. Like, it's going to be an expensive show. Do you guys think that the UFC can't afford that? They could do nothing but Sphere shows and make money hand over fist, even if they were very, very costly in the end. This is just another way to extract revenue. So, like, how do you feel about Saudi Arabia being involved or not? It's up to the people individually how they feel. I don't know what to say. But the government contracting part of this is the one that folks should pay attention to, because that has become a massive source of revenue, and I think it's going to influence how events look and where they take place.
No question.
Always hasn't.
Especially because the idea that TKO now is trying to package everything together, rightfully so for them, and the idea that they're offering to cities not just buying UFC pay-per-view, you're buying 4 different nights of WWE wrapped around that. We get that. I think the question of, is it just bad timing and bad taste? Similar to when the UFC for Black History Month had Michael Chandler, who talks, of course, about being a white male adopting black children, and Mike is very big on, I don't want to label anybody by color or anything, and I'm not here to shout out that. I'm saying people responded back to that in a negative sense, saying, was that the right way to do it? Dana White rolling out power slap just weeks after slapping his own wife. Timing couldn't have been worse in that regard. Luke, the dedication, this has always been May and September for boxing. The holiday weekend, Cinco de Mayo, Independence Day weekend has always been a big thing about Mexican culture. In your opinion, is this bad timing and bad taste, and does it take away from everything Noche is supposed to be just because the biggest guy in the room with the most money raised his hand and said, I want to sponsor that event? Because I can't tell you that, it's in bad taste, but look at what's going on in boxing. This is great for boxing. That's hypocritical. I'm also not of the Mexican descent, but I've heard from enough of our fans that they're like, how does the company not see what this looks like to us? Does that matter, Luke? Are they right? That's really the question I'm asking you.
Mexican fans to MMA are, relative to boxing, new. These are new fans. Like, are there really people inside? Like, look at the UFC executive team. How many people of Mexican descent do you see in there driving and influencing decisions at the executive level? I've seen that show, which, by the way, is going to be like a one and done thing. The Fight Inc., whatever it's called. Apparently,
Dana said they show too much.
He's right. Yeah, I wondered about that. Yeah. He's actually probably right about that. But I'm saying, how many people inside that team do you see driving decision making or influencing thinking along those lines? Probably not a whole lot, which isn't to say that they can't do a good job. I'm just sort of pointing out, guys, like, and under any scenario, if they were trying to do something for Mexican Independence Day, they're still all trying to make a buck. Like that would be true for UFC or Bob Arum or Eddie Hearn or PBC. Like, they're all still trying to make a buck. But this one, I think what really rubs people the wrong way is that it's like so nakedly trying to make a buck. And one where, again, if you're a monopoly, you don't need their money. You're just taking it because there's a lot of it, which, again, maybe businesses just do that. But that's the part that rubs people the wrong way. It's like, we've got this thing. It's a love letter to Mexican fans brought to you by something that has absolutely nothing to fucking do with it. That doesn't need to be here.
It's not like it's brought to you by a sponsor that goes hand in hand with the heritage of, it's not like Corona presents UFC Noche. We'd be like, okay, cool. It's like Saudi Arabia and Riyadh season. I mean, whatever. Okay, look.
I'll tell you what, though. It does look cool as shit, though. It looks cool as shit. I will
tell you, they'll find a way. Dana White wants it to be first so badly, and we do like when he puts his passions toward things that we care about, and this is one of them. It's going to be spectacular. I'm sure the card's going to deliver. I'm sure it's going to be a unique experience, and also I'm sure it has potential to be one and done, just given the price and the scope of it. Luke, do you want to see it? Do you want to press pass? Do you want to be in there after seeing part of what the Dead can offer, part of what live music can offer in that great event hall? What is your feeling on that? Because I don't know what it's going to look like on TV in comparison.
I'm definitely intrigued. I mean, I'm very, 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 very intrigued. And I was actually, again, branding aside, just from what it looked like, are they really going to be able to make use of these facilities in the way that we had experienced it? And it was like, oh my God. From the outside, and again, that's just a tiny taste of what you'll see on the inside, I am cautiously optimistic. So I think it's going to be great. And, the branding, we can have a conversation about that over time. But just in terms of how it will feel, I feel pretty good. But it's just so many unknowns, it's really hard to say. That's it.
Is this the part of the show where I ask you whether the country can swap out Biden in time, Luke, or no? That's probably the wrong time.
By September?
Can they legally swap out once they realize that, like,
he's old as fuck?
Yeah. I mean,
they can do it. They can do it at the convention. They actually can do it at the convention.
I don't want to find somebody that can beat Trump. I want to find somebody that's competent to run this nation. Luke,
yeah.
please.
I want someone who can pick up $1 if it falls out of their pocket. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Let's bring back the wig party if that's what it's going to take.
And I will say this: I want someone who doesn't shit themselves. But BC, you and I have been there. You know what I'm saying? So really,
let's normalize shitting your pants. It happens in this world. All right. Hey, why don't we talk about that big old shit that Oscar dropped on Haney?
All right, so dude, Oscar De La Hoya is like, dude, he doesn't give a fuck anymore. I mean, he never really did, but he doesn't give a fuck at all anymore. So Devin Haney has been complaining he's not getting paid enough and blah, blah, blah.
No,
And
he's
people are-
he's complaining that he wasn't paid from the Garcia pay-per-view in time. And then Oscar explained, I paid you the bulk. You get paid the pay-per-view over time. That's how this works.
Yeah. All right. So then he put out this like hit piece of a video. Let's take a look.
All right, guys. Everybody talked about Ryan Garcia. Now it's Papi's turn. So, first of all, I don't condone pets whatsoever. Period. But let's talk about the inconsistencies, the penalties, the millions of dollars. I do not understand it. We should have a commission, okay, that oversees everything, every state, because Canelo Alvarez gets popped in a different state, gets 6 months. Shane Mosley gets popped and gets 0. So you're telling me that Ryan Garcia gets a year and millions of dollars? That is not right. Let's talk about Devin Haney now. Devin Haney, you're pathetic. You're dancing around in the bowling alley because you got your decision reversed. Nobody's gonna forget about that beating you took. Oh, and let's not forget, you're accusing me of not paying you? Bro, you just do not sell. That's the bottom line. You can audit my company anytime you want. I pay every fighter, and I'm pretty sure you got that from Canelo, what he started. So bro, that 1 year layoff, that retirement, just enjoy it. Fuck you.
Wow. Now you tell me who won, Luke. Right? Yeah.
Dude, he's on a fucking rampage these days, man. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. He hates peds too, Luke. I love how he pronounced that. Peds.
I can't stand it when people call them peds. It's the most annoying. It always makes me think of, remember the shoes when we were kids called, was it Keds?
Keds, yeah, Keds.
Yeah.
They were made in the rubber factory in Naugatuck, Connecticut, Luke. So let's be that's my hometown.
And they're also a shoe that doesn't exist anymore. So that's why, you know,
yeah,
it says a lot.
That barely exists.
Says
anymore.
a lot. Yeah. Dude, it's just fucking, dude, I have to, let me ask you this, and I'm being serious. It's the same thing, well, not the same thing. It reminds me a little bit of Ian Gary, where I get why Haney there's been a monster pushback on him, in part because he keeps inflaming and stoking things. And, you know, he was like, oh, you know, Ryan is making a bad example for the kids on drugs. And then he's, you know, endorsing various marijuana companies out in California. So like there's real contradiction there. Like he's just done a bunch of stuff that I totally get why people push back. That being said, even with all of that, dude, there is vitriol against this guy in a way. If you think Ian Gary is the most hated guy in combat sports, you're wrong. It is definitely Devin Haney. It's Devin Haney. I feel bad for him. So let me ask you this. Are you surprised at how bad it's gotten?
I am surprised at how bad it's gotten, where you know, Garcia, obviously it seems like lied, took the drugs. Now look, I mean, look, it's up to he said in this case, but the facts seem to support that Ryan, this wasn't an accident, Luke, but yet Ryan is so aggressively playing the villain or the Joker character in boxing and being tough at every turn that it's just starting, you know, it's at boxing. We love that activity and that behavior. He's kind of being the hero because of it. So it's unfair to Haney that he's the one who's sort of quote unquote the victim. But the way he's responded, the way he's handled this, saying I'm going to sit out a year, 2 years, I'm not going to fight again until Ryan gets back and we get the rematch. Look, the rematch is going to be huge, and it's going to allow Haney to potentially exercise his demons in ways that Miguel Cotto got to in the Margarito rematch. That's going to happen. But in the meantime, what Haney needs to do is be busy, because the biggest thing, look, but whether it's in the Twitter streets or the barbershops, boxing is always going to be you're only as good as your last fight or your last, you know, trash talk conversation in terms of people, how people gauge you. The best way to change the public persona is to get out there, stay busy, look great doing it, and win. So I think if you're Haney, go out there and get a mandatory right away. Defend your title. Go out there and search for the kind of guys like Rolly Romero, God, like an Adrian Broner, not now, but someone like that, where it's like
he would get killed.
I know, but someone like that, where it's like you can come back, get a stoppage, show people I am that guy, and maybe even flirt with the idea of going up to welterweight. A lot of people want to face Mario Barrios, who was just upgraded to full welterweight titleship, as I think Crawford was moved to like champion in recess or whatever. Look, the welterweight division is turning over with guys like Boots Ennis, also Mario Barrios. Manny Pacquiao wants that, thinking that could be an easy path to a title. What about Haney trying something like that? My point is he needs to try something, come back, remind us who he is. because in boxing, you don't win with this victim mentality, this defensive mentality. And he already had a lot of strikes against him where people say you can't sell, you don't have pop, you're not as good as you think you are.
People didn't think he beat Lomachenko. There's a lot of that.
Sure. There's been a lot of strikes against him. Best thing you can do is come back and play into that extreme masculinity of boxing, the macho side, and go out there and knock somebody out. I think, look at that. He's serious. That's the best thing you can do. So that when it comes time for that rematch with Garcia, he's coming in as strong as possible, commercially, mentally, spiritually, all of that.
I will say though, taking time off after that beating is also a good idea. Like for now.
Yeah. Look, there were things that were exposed in that fight. Straight up, there were legitimate things in his defense, which has been brilliant, that were outright exposed. Now, I said it from the beginning, it's rare that you're going to find a fighter with that type of speed and power in the combination. And we've caught Ryan on the right night where he refused to lose, whether it was PED, fueled or not. But Haney's got to figure that out, cover up that hole, and go back to being who he is. And that's one of the best skilled fighters in this game, regardless. Now, I think it's right what everybody's saying. Even though that loss was changed now to a no contest, it's not going to change the memory in people's minds, nor necessarily should it. But you can change people's memories by getting back out there. So stop talking, stop tweeting, start fighting, mother effer.
Yeah, you can't fight the internet, but if you win, you end up defeating the internet, right?
Yeah, you also can't fight the seether, Luke. That's a 90s reference. Garbage.
Oh, you mean the band?
Yeah, can't fight the seether. No? Okay, sorry. I guess I'll go back to Delamitri, the right time and the roll to me, Luke. I mean, it's what's weird.
I was never a big Garbage fan. I mean, Stupid Girl was on the radio all the time, but that was really about it, you know?
I get fired up for that song by Republica, Ready to Go. You know what I mean? I'm hot. I'm ready to go.
Dude, Shifty Shellshock died. Shifty Shellshock died. Remember that?
No.
He was the lead singer of Crazy Town. Come, my lady.
Oh,
come,
yes.
He
With
fucking
Butterfly,
died,
yes.
Man. Yeah. Dude, let me tell you something. That song came out my senior year of college. And, I was the world's biggest douchebag, probably now, but also then. Definitely. Everyone was. I mean, we didn't like the song, but it was everywhere. It was every fucking.
It was kind of a sellout tune based on who they actually were as a band, too, Luke. People, once we go to pop, they say once we go to pop, the show will stop. Once sang 311, who sold out to pop themselves with Amber and a cover of The Cure's Love Song. But I'm not mad at 311 for that, Luke, because I'd love to find out the color of that chick's energy. It turns out they did for us, Amber.
Dude, also, every girl I've ever known who listened to 311 wanted to bang Nick Hexum. So he's probably
still do. He's a handsome guy. I'd love to get him on the show one day. That's the
His
thing.
resume is probably absurd.
There's a rare window right now in our lives where we have a small amount of like celebrity / platform / influence, small amount, where we can actually seek out our quote unquote washed up 90s heroes that are still out there, Luke, but may not be getting the hero rub. I'd love to create a segment on the show where we just bring on washed heroes from our youth. Luke, and
dude, I haven't even told you this, dude, but like literally I've kind of not stopped going to the gym, but more working out at home, because I'm not even joking. Every fucking time I go to the gym now, and these people are nice, don't get me wrong, but I get spotted at the gym, and then the people are friendly. I don't misunderstand me. However, the only issue is they want to chat for like 20 minutes in the middle of my workout.
You got business to do, yeah.
And I'm like, dude, Tukey needs to go to the park, bro. I gotta hurry this shit along.
My wife talk about the gym that we go to as a family, where if in the summertime, if you don't go there before 10 a.m., Luke, it's just going to be a 20-something hangout area.
It's a lot of broccoli-haired idiots with kids. Their tripods. Yeah,
they hog them. They set up camera. Yes, they actually set up cameras filming themselves do basic workouts. I mean,
I know. It's like, dude, there's nothing interesting about this. So
I should create a website where we film ourselves masturbating. Oh, only pipes. We already have that. Yeah, sorry, it's out.
Perfect transition. Speaking of only pipes, Paige VanZant is back in the news, BC, because her decline is really at this point incontestable.
Shakespearean, Luke.
She's going to do Power Slap, and I guess she did a media event this week to talk about it. We have the video here. Let's hear what she had to say.
How did this come together? How did this opportunity come about?
Everyone keeps asking me that. Who knows? I got called if I would do Power Slap. I said absolutely, and that was it. Signed the contract, and here I am, here to do Power Slap. And I think it's exciting for me because it's like, listen, I am a gangster. Whether people want to admit it or not, I am here to slap somebody. It doesn't matter what organization, what combat sport. I'm here to take over and have some fun.
Yeah, you've certainly shown a willingness to compete under any rule set. So before the call came in, had you ever even considered the option of like, man, maybe I should reach out to them, or maybe they'll reach out to me one day?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a conversation that we had in the gym. Everybody watches Power Slap. They've taken over. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody's seen the highlight videos. And a lot of people are like, no, I would never do that. Or they have mixed emotions about it all. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I would do that. Of course. I mean, I look back at my UFC career, my bare knuckle boxing career, everything that I've done, you can't take away how tough I am. And this is like that ultimate test of toughness. You stand there, you got to be able to have the balls to get hit.
They can't take away how tough she is, Luke, but they can take away her dignity. And that's what's happening here. I hate to see this.
First of all, among everything in that video, the one that I found most offensive was she was like, everybody watches Power Slap. Nobody watches Power Slap.
No, they don't. I'm not saying she's not a gangster and she like more power.
She's tough.
Paige.
She's tough.
She's done big things in her life. She's made herself a brand. But Luke, this is the bottom of the fucking food chain. And for her to go here already, and I know you can argue when she went to BKFC that it maybe looked somewhat similar, but she went at a time where she was putting her brand first. She was getting paid a ton. She was actually willing to go in there and get into real fights. I give her credit, even though it didn't really go her way. This is what you do, Luke, when you need crack money, in my opinion. And the company's using her right now to legitimize this thing, or try to get it off the idea of circus and to get it to the idea that it could work for ex-UFC fighters too as a career path. And God, I don't know what she's getting paid. I hope it's very well, but it's sad. It really is sad. Where do you go from here? That's the question. Where do you go from here? You know where you go from here. You know it, Luke. You know where you go from here.
Brazzers.
Okay.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen your credit card statements. I know where you go from there a lot, Luke.
Pro biller is what it comes.
I mean, no, like, look, am I being too harsh, Luke? I know it's because no, you guys just fucking hate Dana and Power Slap, or you guys just hate Paige. I don't hate Paige. This is just a bad look. Just a no-win situation.
The thing I don't understand is I talked to somebody who she had discussed some of the money she was making on OnlyFans and how much it was, and it's an extraordinary amount of money, and which I have no issue with. Like, fine, like if people want to pay that and she can do it and it's safe and it's she has control over it, more power to her. I mean,
cashing those checks, then that's fine.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is it's like a huge amount of money, and so my only thing that I just don't get is you could get. I mean, for Power Slap is dumb as shit, and you could get fucked up doing it. Why would you risk that if you're making good money on OnlyFans? That's the part I just don't really get. Unless like maybe this is like a backdoor back to the UFC, like, oh, I'll do this, and if it goes well, maybe I can find another fight contract or something. I don't know what the answer is, but
I mean, is that even viable to bring her into the 125 division as sort of a celebrity attraction fight? I mean, look, she get handled by anyone. She would.
I don't. Again, I just don't get it because my understanding is she doesn't need the money in that sense at all. So, but here we are. Here the fuck we are. So there we go, BC. That's our show.
We have to end on that note because it leaves me sad. It leaves me sad for the future of America, Luke. I'm somehow linking Power Slap to last night's debate, but it's all part of the degradation of this country. I feel bad for Paige. I feel bad for the voters, Luke. I mean, do we vote for FK Jr. now? Can I vote for senior still, or did Sirhan end that idea, Luke? Is that too soon on that joke? Good Lord.
They RFK is the stadium is still.
I mean, we just passed through some cool FDR jokes last episode, Luke. We're really improving our historical comedy.
Yeah. All right, BC. So let's see. Let's remind everyone. Monday we have our show. Also, Gilbert Burns, fresh off the announcement about his main event coming up with Sean Brady. He will be with us at noon. On Monday, we'll be in New York, and we'll react to everything UFC 303, and might even talk a little bit of Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, right, BC? By the way,
yeah,
they're putting it on Fight Pass for $50. Yeah, smart move.
I think they've done well. They're also offering a free T-shirt if you order the pay-per-view from the FanMio website. So this is getting bigger by the day. I'm looking forward to being a part of it. And also, Luke, don't forget this Saturday, tomorrow. We do have boxing this weekend. Teofimo Lopes is back on ESPN. You can check out our interview with him on youtube.com/morningcombat from a few weeks ago. He'll be defending his title at 140 against Steve Claggett. We know he wants Terrence Crawford. He's willing to move up in weight next. He's a big favorite, though, against Claggett. We'll see what happens there. And don't forget on Saturday from Phoenix on DAZN, an absolute thriller in the making here. Bam Rodriguez, remember, he won a title at 115, knocked out all the old guard there. Sisaketsu Rungvisai, Quadras he beat by decision. Then he moved down in weight, Luke, moved up in weight, won the title at 118. Dominant performance, handing Sonny Edwards his first defeat. So now what is he going to do? He's going to go back to 115, and the one big name left outside of Chocolatito that he hasn't faced, and that's Juan Francisco Estrada, the future Hall of Famer, the Mexican icon in the making, who has literally beaten everybody across from him in his eras, Luke, including Chocolatito twice. Dude, this is going to be high-speed chess Mexican war on Saturday. Luke, Bam just 24. Give me that. Are you ready for this? It's going to be a thriller.
I am ready. Also, I did a light sponsorship of a guy fighting in DC tonight. Scooter Davis fights on the Lamont Roach card that's going to be on Pro Box TV.
Yes.
By the way, when I tell you they did no promotion here in the city, they did no promotion here in the city. Zero fucking
So
nothing.
wait, is this Christian DeGiro MMA MK on your dick type of style, or did you buy a sponsorship for this young fighter?
I put my live chat logo on his shorts. Yeah.
So where did you have specific where you're like, I would like either
I think it's like back of the shorts. I think it's back of the shorts. Yeah.
Back at like up or down.
No, like on the back of the leg. On the back of the leg. Yeah.
Okay.
You know how boxing trunks are. They're enormous, right?
You should have make him stay frosty across his pelvis, Luke. That'd be great.
He didn't offer that, nor was I interested. But
yeah. Hey, I appreciate you giving back to DC, the community, boxing in general here. So shout out Scooter Davis. We'll be checking him out this week.
Scooter Davis fights tonight on the Lamont Roach card if you watch Pro Box TV. So you might see my logo on his shorts. All right. Well, that is it. BC, travel safe. I will see you Monday. Enjoy the fights tomorrow. Let's remind everyone last thing.
So my barber went real high this week, Luke. I had a replacement barber. So my wife thinks
I think you're just balding. I think
she thinks it looks like I'm balding, but I'm really not. Like, check out this side. I'm not balding at all, right?
Yeah, you're balding. I mean,
I'm really not though. This is a trick. Luke, you're holding it together well for an old piece of shit.
I'm thinning. I'm thinning up top. So what can you do?
Yeah, you just keep doing that Trump thing. Just keep,
just comb it over. He works for him, bro. Also, you can follow us on all the social here, all that fun stuff. BC, LT, MK, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah.
Look, Luke, we come and go in life, but I have to say, doing this show with you, back uncensored here on a Friday, doing it for free, doing it for the people.
Free MK Fridays.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we're still at this. I'm grateful to have a partnership. Shout out to Casper leaving Submission Radio. I know that's been a big topic this week. Yeah. I'm grateful for what we've built. Hey, if we have to do it through 2 cans and a string for $9.99 a month, we might one day, but hopefully not. Let's keep building what we have here. Look, it's a movement. It's what we do. It's brilliantly dumb. It's Morning Combat.
Hey, thanks to everyone who tuned in today. We really appreciate every single one of you. Enjoy the fights tomorrow. Catch my post-fight show. Catch BC on HQ. And then we'll see all of you guys on Monday.
Catch this fade. Yeah, catch this two-piece. How about it?
All right. So that's it. Until next time, boys and girls. Well,